Welcome to the Everyone's a Critic movie review podcast. I'm your host today, Sean Kernan. Bob is off today. He is somewhere in Montana, I believe.
On purpose?
Visiting Ted Kaczynski. He likes to go to the grave once a year to say hello.
In his hoodie and sunglasses and mustache.
Yeah, you should probably introduce who's talking.
Every family has a tradition.
It's
Jeff is here. Hey, Jeff.
What's up? I'm a minion.
Are you from the 90s? When did that happen? Was that? Amy's here too.
Hiya.
But she didn't watch any movies, so
No.
don't pay attention to her.
Yeah. No, I'm only here just to look up information for them.
Well, you can clap when I make a good point. I mean, that'd be helpful.
It's funny if I don't clap at all.
Your hands won't get tired.
We're ready.
On Twitter, it's @CriticsPod, and of course on Patreon, search Everyone's a Critic. Bob does that way better than I do. He's got a whole spiel that I just can't memorize.
Listen to last week's episode.
There's that,
Yeah,
too.
just the beginning and then come back to this one.
Bob, splice it in. You're going to be doing this, right? So before we get started here, I just want to say hello again. We were going to record not too long ago about another movie that we didn't record about. Because I was actually considering writing about a movie that is a legendary piece of horror.
Horror?
Yeah, I thought it was horrible. There was a movie that turned 50 a couple weeks ago, and we were going to do a special episode on it, and you were going to be here, and you even read a book for it.
I read the book Ordeal by Linda Lovelace, who was the star of Deep Throat, which is also my drag name. Basically, it talked about her, how after she left the porn industry, she became a very vocal anti-porn advocate, and talked about how, she was raped, and pretty much everything she did was her being raped. Now, there was some controversy over the book because some people said, well, no, it didn't quite happen that way. Some people said, no, I can back up everything she said. Though the way it's described in the book, her relationship with Chuck Traynor, there was a lot of things that it was literally only her word against him, and he was, though, a notorious piece of shit. So you tend to believe most of what she says in the book. And that kind of, full disclosure, somebody gave that book to my mom. That's not a book my mom would have ever bought. And that was the first time I ever knew anything about oral sex, and I was like 10.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I mean, now on the internet, I know about it before I left kindergarten. But
The Conservative is coming out.
well,
About time.
yes, I am the church lady. Yeah, it's not a really well written book, but you can read it really quickly. It's called Ordeal. It's been around since the late 70s, so
Honestly, I think Deep Throat kind of underlines some of the points she makes. I mean, honestly.
Yeah.
The way because I did watch this thinking, well, there must be something to this, right? There's nothing to it. There's absolutely nothing to that movie. No. It hardly exists. It's this ludicrous male fantasy that this woman could grow clitoris in her throat, and thus why she enjoys
Wait, that's not real? Amy, does that really happen? I don't know anything
She's not
about
allowed
women.
to comment. It's just...
Is that real?
What woman doesn't just absolutely enjoy it all the time? I don't understand. No. There's just nothing to it. It's just all gratuitous nonsense. And I don't know. I wasn't even really that excited by it, honestly.
No, I saw it years and years ago in college. Just a bunch of us, were like, "Ooh, what's this all about?" And one of my friends had a film theory class, and they showed it in film theory, which didn't go over very well at the University of Denver. Let me tell you. Since I'm not a straight person, I
What?
was not excited about it whatsoever. All the men in it are completely disgusting specimens. There was nothing at all.
Was this 70s?
Yeah, it was 1972.
Everybody was so oily back then, too.
Yeah.
And, like, if you
What-
were 15, you looked like you were 50. What
Why
was
did
that
they
about?
love brown so much? That's what I want to know. Like, what is that?
Brown, orange, and yellow. It's like those shit colors.
Always fall
Yeah,
in
right.
the 70s. Because you start at a point, because this thing isn't very long, thankfully, but at a certain point you do start pondering the walls. Like, just like, why would you choose that? Why would you choose those drapes? Why would you choose that couch? You know, because there's nothing else. It's diminishing returns at a certain point.
As somebody who was very into like 50s and 60s architecture and design, the 70s ate all that up and shit it out.
Basically.
That's why everything's brown.
Yep.
No wonder that the 80s embraced neon so much. We just want fucking color. Give me a fucking color that looks
Neon.
alive, please.
Neon and brass. Like, everything was brass. And now brass is coming back, and I hate it. I
No.
hate it.
We've already been through that Billy Squier music video.
We're not doing it. We're not doing it again. Torture.
Well, speaking of an icon of the 70s, essentially, he became one again, I guess, in the 70s. Of course, I did see Baz Luhrmann's Elvis. I'm a huge Baz Luhrmann fan. I think he's amazing as a director for the most part. I love Moulin Rouge. It's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yep.
This movie, I don't understand what drew him to this. So this is not necessarily a biopic. It kind of is. It kind of isn't. It does have elements of Elvis's life as a child and his family, but it also has like some fantastical elements. A lot of it is just, or at least they feel fantastical because the editing is so all over the place. It's just pure chaos at times watching this movie. There's something being tossed at the screen all the time, and it's
So
this
it's
constant,
a Baz Luhrmann movie?
Yeah.
Well, Moulin Rouge had romance and a love story that I fell in love with that I think kept my attention very well. Same
And a
with
killer soundtrack.
exactly, and
Oh my
Romeo
God.
and Juliet the same. I was drawn in by the performance of Leonardo DiCaprio there. Austin Butler doesn't quite have that kind of presence. And Tom Hanks is buried under all this makeup and a terrible accent, which he's good at doing, I'm sure, but it just seems almost comical at times. And I didn't enjoy it. I didn't hate it because it's Baz Luhrmann. I don't think he can make a truly terrible movie, but it is chaotic, and the editing especially is just so chaotic that things are flying past so quickly. They really underplay. If you can do this, they underplay the drug use a little bit, which is kind of weird. They also they totally leave off they don't have Austin Butler really get into the fat Elvis era, which I hate saying it that way, but like
Come on.
the
that's
out of shape
no.
Elvis years, you know.
Right.
They by that time they kind of fade out of him, and they go to this they go to a newspaper headline that announces Elvis's death, and then he dies. By the way, I didn't know if you.
He's not dead.
No.
I saw Elvis the other day at the Piggly Wiggly.
For the last 15 years of my life, Sean said that I was the reason why Elvis died because I was born in 1977. So, real quick, just something that I was reading about this, and I think I agree with this statement, is that the fun of a Luhrmann film is that you never get historical accuracy. You get a delirious kind of, they say, Baz mania. And I think that is true with any, like if you look at, look at how he did Romeo and Juliet. You know, we're in Miami Beach. You know, we're not really set in Verona, that kind of thing. He just kind of takes the historical parts of stories, but this is a true story, but it's more about his storytelling than it is anything. It's how Baz Luhrmann wants to see.
Yeah, I just never got a sense of what it is that drew Baz Luhrmann to this, though. Like, I can understand what drew him to Moulin Rouge. I can understand what draws him to Shakespeare. I can't see what brought him to this, because the Elvis aesthetic is not... it's a lot more mainstream than typically what Baz Luhrmann seems to be into. Not that Shakespeare isn't kind of mainstream, and even the Moulin Rouge, went mainstream in many ways because it was a jukebox musical, it had a lot of popular, well-known songs in it. But I just don't see Elvis matching the kind of aesthetic that Baz goes for, and so I think he kind of goes into overdrive trying to edit this thing to death to bring it energy and color, and I just don't think it quite works.
Well, you're saying, like, if you say something like, if something is edited to death, I would hate watching that. Like, there's those moments...
The first hour of this movie, yeah, they're rushing through Elvis's childhood, and everything is told from the perspective of Colonel Tom Parker, so you're having to hear that Tom Hanks...
like that?
Oh, no, he's Hungarian in real life.
Shut up, he's not.
He is, he's Hungarian.
I did not
Colonel Tom
know
Parker
that.
is Hungarian, yeah.
Well... With the name Colonel Tom Parker, I just
Obviously.
assumed he was
No,
Hungarian.
his real name is something very like I can't even pronounce. I don't think. Yeah,
and we're not going to try. So
no.
that's okay.
So that's the accent that he's playing. Though is this the Eastern European accent that he's trying to Americanize? Which Colonel Parker did that. He had a deeply Eastern European accent that he tried to Americanize and tried to claim that he was from the South.
Kind of off subject. Was it really a colonel?
No.
Well, then why take that?
Stolen valor.
It sounds official. You respect a colonel when you hear Colonel Tom.
I'm Amy for the rest of the show.
Get in line, Amy. Get in line.
There's only one queen here today.
Right?
I only have so much Pinot Grigio, so please don't make me spit it out again.
No, did you know that Elvis wasn't allowed to leave the country because Colonel Tom Parker couldn't travel outside the United States because he didn't have a passport?
Was that in the movie, or did you just know that?
That's in the movie.
Wow, I did not know that.
It doesn't really seem to have a good handle on who they thought Elvis was. Like, it's still everything about Elvis that you think you know about Elvis. And there's no real new insight, and I'm not sure if there's ever going to be any kind of new insight into Elvis. I mean, Priscilla's told her story, Colonel Tom's told his story, the Memphis Mafia have told their story about him. They've painted a pretty complete picture of who Elvis is. I don't know if there's any new insight to be gleaned if you're going to, and he's not necessarily sticking directly to Elvis' story, but certainly he's giving us the Elvis that we expect, and the Elvis that we kind of think we know, even though nobody really knows the real Elvis.
Right, except for his family.
Right.
But, like, I hate the casting. I hate the casting, because I'm looking at this picture right now of Austin Butler, and I don't know if it's just me, but, like, he could play John Travolta when he was younger.
He's no Michael St. Gerard.
He's no Michael St. Gerard. And oh my God, he looked just like him.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah, you're exactly right. So, yeah, and now he's apparently affected Elvis's voice pattern. He's like, well, it's just something that I'm used to now. Well, that's great.
I mean, he got the voice down. I mean, it definitely sounds like Elvis for sure. I don't know if he actually did the singing in the movie. I don't know.
I'm looking for that right now.
I'm actually not aware.
I have no idea. I hate Elvis. I'm sorry. I have
Is
no...
there like did Elvis touch you? What happened?
Only in my heart. The only redeeming quality about Elvis, as far as I'm concerned, is the fact that apparently his favorite movie was Black Christmas.
No, it wasn't.
Yep.
Okay, that would be for you the only redeeming quality.
Yes.
That's why you hate everybody else, unless you like that movie.
Right. I didn't grow up with any affinity for him. You know, none of my family liked him. Everybody in our family was the Beatles.
Yeah.
And the Bee Gees. Yes. You know, that kind of stuff. But nobody really cared about Elvis. There was no hero worship or anything like that.
Right.
I was really young when he died. I have.
You just don't care.
It's like I'm completely apathetic about him.
Right.
And
I think I've always been the same way. I never understood the appeal.
Yeah.
To be honest.
So, when I ran into you at the theater the other night, Sean, and you were like, I think I might go see Elvis. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go back to work.
There's something about Elvis that we kind of did grow up with in the 80s is that whole where he became this sort of a sign of ignorance. Like, people would make fun of people who like Elvis in a way, because he was on the Inquirer cover every day, and he's abducted by aliens and all this stuff. And
that's why I love the Inquirer.
But then you also had all this this Elvis memorabilia out there that definitely as much as I understand people want to make money, it all feels very crass, and that affects how you see Elvis. Now, I like what they did in the movie about Elvis in terms of what he did back in the 50s, because it was revolutionary. I mean, yes, he was stealing the music of black people, but he was also platforming many other black artists. I mean, B.B. King was a close friend. he did do some of that. It's still valid to criticize him for stealing black music. There's no doubt about that. But he did also, like, wake up the country in a way that nobody else had done before. You know,
With his pants.
Yeah, I mean, stepping on stage
Elvis
and doing
and
what he
Elvis.
did. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, he hated that too.
Yeah.
He didn't want that. That's just that's what happened. That's what they did. What?
Is that on mute?
No?
Okay.
That would suck.
I
this
already.
whole thing. Oh, God.
Elvis, let me be. Keep that pelvis far from me. That's the only redeeming Elvis
That would
thing
be
about
it.
my life.
That would be it.
It's just that time though. He was pretty revolutionary in that time. He was banned from television. He was almost arrested just for playing a song. So and he forced open a door that we've not been able to close since then. Until yesterday. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
This movie effectively does that.
Yeah. What a nice cap, really, on everything right there. It's great because now we're back in the 50s, so it's like, it's appropriate timing.
That is the element of Elvis, though, that kind of stood out to me, is that the evoking of female sexuality and the reaction of people who would like, oh, no, women aren't allowed to feel that way in public. Stop, Elvis, stop. Women are getting excited.
Women, because back then there was so many closeted gays too. It was probably like, oh, they can find an awakening.
Amy, gay people didn't exist until the 70s.
That's not true.
There is one.
I know your people, John.
It's a little bit. I don't know. They have this Southern judge character who's like he's a member of the Klan and he wants to keep the schools not integrated, and he finds out about Elvis, bringing black and white people together, and then he's doing all the hip stuff, and they cut to a shot of Elvis on TV doing his thing, and that guy's son, he was like 11 or 12 years old, is watching it, and the coding is so so much that you can sense that this child just had an awakening.
I mean, maybe if I was alive in the 50s, maybe I would have had that awakening.
Well, I mean, but you can't deny that he was eye candy. He definitely was eye candy, and people loved to look at him as much as they loved to listen to him. I think I liked his movies better than I liked his music. I was thinking about Clam Bake the other day, and I'm like, God, I really had good memories of watching that with my mom. We loved the music and all that kind of stuff, but
well, nobody will listen to me because it's Elvis, and King Creole is an actually really great movie because it's directed by Michael Curtiz, who granted is guilty of many war crimes, honestly, from his movies back
why
in
did he
the
be so brilliant
early
and so
silent.
awful?
He killed several people. I'm not going to say how many he killed. He killed a few people, but he also directed Casablanca, so he wins.
Yeah.
Was he the Zodiac Killer?
No, that'd be interesting.
We're not talking about Ted Cruz.
Sorry, yeah.
No. Not sure where I was headed.
Michael Curtiz killed a bunch of people?
Michael Curtiz killed a bunch of people.
Tell me more. You've suddenly piqued my interest.
Why didn't they make a movie of that? Like, I would have been interested in that.
But like King Creole is a legit great movie.
Yeah.
And I think people would really be surprised how great Elvis is in that movie. And
I think he's a great actor. I really do. And it's not just Elvis playing Elvis. Like, there are times where you can see the real emotion in him.
according to this movie, if you believe what you see in this movie, he was going to get the Chris Christopherson part in A Star Is Born.
No.
He was going to get that, but he felt that Barbara and Colonel Tom couldn't be in the same room together.
Why?
Because Barbara would hate him.
Oh, well, yeah. I guess I get that. I guess quite rightly.
Yeah, I don't know if they met before, and that's the impression that they got, or I don't know. Colonel Tom kind of tried to, as much as he liked taking Elvis to Hollywood, and he also would like try and just control everything that he did and make sure that he had the control over everything that he did. And it was who tells this story better, and I guess in a similar way is the Beach Boys movie with John Cusack and Paul Dano.
Yeah.
That movie takes a similar tact with somebody who's a guru and taking over somebody's life and robbing them of who they are. That movie does a much better job than this one does of telling a story like that, because this one seems just too much focused on the glitz and glamour. It also just seems like, at times, because Colonel Tom is narrating this, that we don't really have a good sense of whether or not Baz Luhrmann is taking a stand on Colonel Tom. He does kind of at the end, like this guy's really a terrible person, a criminal who robbed Elvis and kept all his money for himself and that kind of stuff. But throughout, you're talking about you have him played by the nicest guy in the world that everybody loves.
Yeah.
It's not like Tom Hanks is going to be able to make that turn for us to start hating him at any point.
Right.
We're always going to give a Tom Hanks character, even if he's playing a monster like Colonel Parker, we want to give Tom Hanks the benefit of the doubt. And so that casting kind of doesn't work in a way.
Yeah, you did get, I was thinking more along the lines of, Michael Shannon or somebody like that, that you already kind of have that. He's always had that kind of I'm not a good guy kind of act. Great actor, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Somebody like that. And so how was the makeup?
It was good, yeah. It's
Believable?
seamless
Good.
makeup, yeah. Tom Hanks looked like a big fat guy.
I don't like that. I don't like that. I'm not going to watch it.
I'm not recommending it. If you want to watch Baz Luhrmann direct, watch Romeo and Juliet, watch Moulin Rouge. I think those are two genuinely great movies. And this one, I'm very mixed on. I don't hate it. I'm very, very mixed.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I was just real quick here. You brought up King Creole, and I was reading a little bit about it here, and they were saying that probably was his best role. So, it says here, did that Memphis show really end in a riot after only one song? Did that happen in the movie?
I think I remember something like that in the movie. Yeah, I mean, because he got arrested like as soon as he started doing, his hips moving around. They did go on stage to arrest him, I guess.
Okay. Well, they're saying that didn't really happen.
Well, like a lot of things in this movie probably didn't happen. But
Just some fact checking. So don't go to this movie thinking this is the definitive, because it's not.
You mean it's not an absolutely 100% true biography?
Right. That only that person would know how it went, but we're all gonna. Yeah, exactly.
Toulouse-Lautrec also didn't star in a Indian musical at the Moulin Rouge. So
That you know.
Whoa.
That you know of.
What the fuck?
God, why do you just go ahead and ruin it for everybody? But yeah, you should go watch Moulin Rouge right now. Anyone should. It's great.
yeah. I
Finish
agree.
listening to us first and then go watch it. God, Amy.
Sorry.
Pick
I'm
up the
bad.
phone. The black phone.
I think I might step outside for this one, you guys, because I don't care. Is
What the
this Ethan
fuck,
Hawke?
Jesus?
Is this Ethan Hawke?
Yes.
Okay, now I love him. So, did he write this? Tell me
No.
about this.
No. This is written and directed by directed by Scott Derrickson,
Okay.
who is a tremendous horror movie director. He drew the good Doctor Strange movie. He directed.
I really
He's
need
a
that
terrific. He's a terrific director, is the point, and he's got a really great story here. So it's set in Colorado in the late '70s. There's a character called the Grabber that is going around and nabbing kids. He uses these black balloons to kind of wrap them up and toss them in the back of his van, take them home, and put them in a basement, torture them for a while, and then commit a murder.
Great.
Pause.
I love Princeton.
So he puts them in a van and takes them home, tortures them, and murders them. People are looking for him. They've got signs and flyers up everywhere trying to find these kids. One after another keeps going missing. The main two characters are a brother and sister who have, I guess, one of them at least has a sort of a supernatural power where in her dreams she can kind of see things that have happened, kind of psychically connect to victims in this case and figure out maybe where they are or what's happened to them.
She sounds like a dream warrior. It sounds like Nightmare on Elm Street.
She's really great, though. She's a wonderful character, and I really loved her. And the little brother, the older brother, he gets kidnapped, and she tries to force herself to use this power to try and find him. Meanwhile, he's also kind of having this weird supernatural experience where, trapped in Ethan Hawke's basement, he starts getting these phone calls from this disconnected phone on the wall, and it's all of the past victims calling him and giving him tips on how to get out of here. A lot of that is just, it's really well done. And this movie has one of the best jump scares that I've seen in a movie in some time. And it's just Derrickson using his camera so incredibly well. He's got this really good close-up on the kid on the phone. He just turns his camera a little bit, and honestly, I leapt. It was terrific. What a great piece of direction.
Yeah, I mean, we need more horror movies like this. We don't need more Insidious movies or more Conjuring movies.
More Saw.
Yeah, I mean,
I love Saw. I love Insidious. Give me more.
they're fine. They're fine. But we need original stuff like this, too. It's based on a short story by Joe Hill, who is Stephen King's son. It's only a 20-page story.
2004?
I don't know.
Came out in 2004.
But, it's only a 20-page story, so, Scott Derrickson and the writer, whose name is escaping me now, I just listened to him on a podcast the other day, they were able to expand on that. That's where, you get the bigger part for the sister, who is amazing and one of the best characters I've seen in a movie in the last 5 years. She's great.
Madeline McGraw.
Yes. Okay. She has some of the best lines. There's a scene that's very disturbing with her in it that the studios tried to get Scott Derrickson to take out, and he said no, because that's one of the only ways this character is because that happened. No spoilers, but she's the adult in the house. Finney, her older brother, just a couple years older, is like a little brother to her. She's the one who seems to have her shit together the most. He's, always being bullied, can't stand up to his father when things are going bad. The father's a drunk, so she's the one who's kind of like in charge, for lack of a better term. The performances in this were just so good. The kind of comic turn that James Ransone, who has worked with Derrickson before in Sinister and Sinister 2. We'll just say Sinister 2. No, don't. Please don't. The fact he's in it, and he doesn't have a huge part, but it's kind of pivotal, and kind of that's part of the mystery is his character. And that's what we need stuff that like kind of throws you off a little bit, that isn't, oh, here comes Vera Farmiga and there's a doll, and the only thing that's going to get them through this is their faith in Jesus and in each other. And
is that on PureFlix? Can I watch that?
Insidious may as well be a PureFlix thing anymore, or The Conjuring.
Yes, thank you.
The Conjuring.
But it's an original idea. It's kind of out there a little bit, and Ethan Hawke is really frightening with the different masks that he wears. He plays that menace super well, and there's a scene where Finn is gonna almost escape, and because this is not your typical, oh, is he gonna get away, or is there gonna be another victim? You don't know any of this, so there are truly tense moments in this.
Incredibly well structured, very smartly put together. They add this element to Hawke's character. He has this thing that he likes to do called Naughty Boy, and that provides you with just a scene that is just so spectacular. Two of them, actually. And two or three of them, really, when you think about it. And it's so perfect the way he plays it. He's crazy, clearly, but he's also got this almost childlike quality at times, and then this very menacing quality. He goes back and forth brilliantly. The way he uses his voice, the way he uses his manner, he lets himself be a little bit out of shape, just a little bit creepy and weird. Just a perfect combination. It's like almost a method killer performance. Yeah. He seems to embody this character so perfectly.
And one of the things about Ethan Hawke movie, whenever he's in a movie, he's almost got to be in every single scene. And it's one thing that kind of always bugged me about him is he's, I'm going to be in every scene. I'm the star of this movie, and he's a star on the poster. But this, the guy who plays Finney, whose name escapes me, is so good that you're not looking for Ethan Hawke. in this movie. You're completely invested in both of the kids.
Absolutely. And I got to give a shout out too to Jeremy Davies, who plays their dad, who really is a creep and does horrible things. But there's a moment near the end that is just kind of beautiful. We don't know if it'll go anywhere, but I mean it's good. It works. And there's a kind of a hopefulness that's there that is really unexpected. It's also not a movie that's playing around with its ending, which I really love that too.
Yeah. Ordinarily with a horror movie, you're kind of waiting around for the jump scare at the end, and this is more kind of esoteric, and it's very satisfying. That was the very first thing I thought after it was over. I'm like, that was very satisfying. And I watch pretty much exclusively horror movies and SVU. So for me to think a horror movie is satisfying, you should definitely see this in the theater.
I completely agree. Like I said, everything about this just works. A lot of it is structure. A lot of it is just direction. It's not a movie that has a lot of gore, but the gore that it has, in terms of at least just practical makeup effects, fucking great. Just brilliantly used.
Yeah. Also, you should see it in the theater because then you get to see the trailer for "Don't Worry, Darling" with Florence Pugh and I can't even say his name.
Harry Styles.
Yeah, Harry Styles. Looks absolutely gorgeous.
Yes.
I can't wait for this movie. And I sat there the whole time. I was watching the trailer and I'm like, wait, what movie am I here to see? Because that's how much it took me. Just took me. So.
I'm getting a little tired of the trailer. I've seen it way too many times.
This is the first time I've ever seen it. So, of course, I don't go to the movies professionally.
Right.
I've seen the trailer a lot. I'm okay. I could go without seeing it for a little while so I can get hyped about that movie again because it does look very good. Olivia Wilde's a terrific director.
She is.
She's awesome.
Also, there was the trailer for Smile. If you're a horror fan, there's some really fucking fucked up horror movies coming out this year.
That trailer for that one looked pretty good. I'm concerned about the September release at any time because September tends to be Unfriended or whatever, that kind of trash.
Why is that? Is it just how they...
It's just how the years get structured. It's summer's over. We're going to... Kids are going back to school.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, September is spooky season. So that you'll see a lot of horror movies in September.
That's true.
And, I mean, I was just... I'm still surprised that the star of that movie is Kevin Bacon and Keira Sedgwick's apparently 45-year-old daughter.
Wait a second, I gotta look this up. What?
But yeah, if you're a horror fan like me, there's a new Winona Ryder movie coming out. I think it was originally called The Cow, but now it's called something about Overnight or something. And that looks really good too. That's I saw the trailer for that the other day. I'm like, oh, I wish this was playing on the big screen because, it looks really tense and fucked up.
Well, and she's amazing. I'm just glad we're seeing more of her.
When it comes to horror movies, I've kind of settled on if it's A24, I know it's going to be good, or if it's Scott Derrickson, I know it's going to be good.
I'm an easy lay for horror movies. That's Amy. You'll appreciate this.
Yeah.
I ran into Sean in the theater, and and I went over and I'm like, I'm hoping. We're talking about the Black Phone. I said, I hope it's as good as I've been hearing. He's like, I've not heard so many good things. I'm like, yeah, I'm talking to horror people.
Right. You're not one of those people, Sean. I love that you can appreciate it, but you do definitely have your own set of what you like, what is kind of more your ilk, I suppose.
Well, it has to be directed by Ari Aster.
I don't know who Ari
I was
Aster
wearing
is.
my Midsommar shirt.
Oh no. Well, okay, so the Winona Ryder movie is Gone in the Night.
Gone in the Night, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, and I would like to see that as well, even though I don't like those kinds of movies. I love her, and I will watch her in anything. So.
Yes.
So how many seasons of Stranger Things have you watched?
All of them, except for this last.
There's
one.
only 2 more episodes next month.
I know, and I didn't start it because
I was hoping she said no for the joke.
I wasn't ready. Oh yeah, you wanted that. If this were 2 weeks ago, yes, you would have been correct. But it's taken me everything I had to like get myself up, because once we do that, again, it's scary to me. It's a terrifying element, but it's a very beautifully done show, and I'm glad that it's getting its due. And I'm glad Kate Bush is getting her due, honestly, because she fucking deserves it.
You know what is so gratifying is when you are a teenager in the Quad Cities and you can't get them to play Kate Bush on the radio.
Right.
You only know Kate Bush from MTV, so you go out and you buy the 45 Running Up That Hill in 1985, and then you're at work, and the hits station, not Mix 96, but the hits station
B100.
is playing Running Up That Hill at work, and I'm just like, my day has come.
I love that, but they also ruin it, because then they follow it up with some Ariana Grande bullshit. Stop it.
She doesn't know how to enunciate.
I'm
I'm
sure she's a very nice person. I just don't care for her music. That's all.
All right, so
You saw a movie that was it a documentary? I'm just looking it up, and I'm not really reading much about it. Rondo and Bob?
Rondo and Bob is a new documentary about Robert. You know who he is. He did the design. He did all the design for Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh, yeah.
Rondo Hatton. I should have known this.
That's not the same guy I'm talking.
No,
I'm talking about Robert.
I just happened to see it because they always reference him on Mystery Science Theater. But anyway, go ahead. Joe Bob Briggs, Rondo Hatton, Peter Locke.
I can't remember his last name, but
Burns.
Burns, thank you. Robert Burns did he created like all of the bones and stuff for Texas Chainsaw Massacre, all the skin chairs and whatnot created by him.
Shout out to my friend John Dugan, who played Grandpa in the original.
Nice.
So this is a story about how Bob Burns became obsessed with this little-known horror guy named Rondo Hatton. He wasn't particularly well-known. He was brought to Hollywood after a career in journalism. He had what it was called. It's the same thing that happened to Andre the Giant. He has that giantism.
Oh yeah.
And but it only affected his head. So his face got really large.
Wait, is this Maniac Cop?
You know, the thing about Rondo Hatton is he for looking the way that he did a shit ton of movies.
Yeah,
and that's what I'm looking at right now.
Did he play Maniac Cop?
I'm almost positive he did. And actually, that might be what I'm thinking of right now.
I don't think so. I thought he was dead much earlier than that.
Well, he died young.
Yeah.
Maniac Cop was like with Bruce Campbell in the 80s.
I don't think he lived to the 80s.
Oh.
Because he and Bob Burns never met.
Oh.
So,
okay.
Yeah, Rondo Hatton was well dead by then.
Okay. I can't remember. I have no capacity today to remember names. So
Rondo Hatton was brought to Hollywood in the immediate aftermath of the Universal Monsters. Like, he was going to be the next generation of the Universal Monsters.
He was in The Root Man. That's the Mystery Science Theater movie I'm thinking of, is The Root Man.
And so that he got a lot of work, but not a lot of work, and it kind of went away after a while. But somehow Bob Burns saw that and became obsessed with Rondo Hatton and developed this sort of, tried to develop his life story and give him a legacy that he deserved, which is a great story, I think. But this movie is bizarre. The choices that they make in this documentary are so weird. So they have actors that act out Bob Clark's life, or Bob Burns' life, and Rondo's life. And they've got this guy in this terrible mask that he can barely speak through, trying to be Rondo Hatton. And you've got this other guy who looks nothing like Bob Burns playing Bob Burns.
Oh no!
And it seems like these are not trained actors to say this in the kindest way I can. They're not trained actors, and it's such that this becomes very bizarre. We actually lose the story of why Bob Burns gets obsessed with Rondo Hatton. Like, why did he get there? Because they spend so much time telling Bob Burns' stories, and Bob Burns. Did you know he was at Texas University when the shooting happened from the bell tower?
Oh wow!
He and Tobe Hooper were both there.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that story.
And I'm sure that had some sort of warping effect on them. But if you watch this documentary, it's just something that sort of happened to them. They just happened to both be there, and that's where they kind of met.
Not fun fact, but one of his first roles, Rondo Hatton I'm talking about, was Uncle Tom's Cabin in 1927, and he played a slave.
Hmm.
He had, just, again, 1927 to 1946, for all the movies that I just showed you, and I just flashed, I didn't flash the guys, but I flashed them my computer to see how many movies, and it's a ton for what he did, and that's a pretty short period of time.
And you would think we would learn that in this documentary, but we don't.
Of course not.
We do learn, Rondo Hatton was beloved by his wife. Like, he had a very attractive wife, and was incredibly charming. Everybody in his life really, really loved him.
Right.
He died relatively young, considering. He always looked very old because of his condition. I really would have liked to have seen more about why Bob Burns gets obsessed with this guy. That's what I was looking for. That's the story that they fail to tell in this documentary, even though that seems to be what's promised. On top of which, they're just doing, Bob Burns did this thing, where late in life he was just kind of hiding out in this small Texas town, just away from the world. And he used to go to this place and, perform on stage, and he did these weird puppet shows. He had he had him and a group of things on a stick that danced with him. He did this. It was weird, but they had somebody recreate this. They had the guy playing him in the documentary recreate this, and then over the credits they play Bob Burns doing that act, and they're like, "Why didn't you just show us that?"
Yeah.
I get that Rondo, they probably just couldn't afford to license the clips because this is a pretty low budget doc.
Right.
So they probably just couldn't license clip from Universal to show, movies of his.
Yeah, that's probably it.
But that just kind of makes it. It just doesn't work. I've rarely reviewed a bad documentary. I don't think there are very many bad documentaries in the world.
And that's a bummer too, because again, you're talking about somebody like Rondo Hatton, who, as I'm looking back on this, I remember, I keep harping back on Mr. Sign Theater, but I'm going to, because they did so many of these kinds of movies back then, that I remember always looking up, if they referenced an actor, I wanted to look him up and figure it out. And by the way, it was acromegaly that he had. And he was poisoned. He got exposed to poison, which I, again, totally forgot about, but I'm looking at this like, wow. But I'm losing my thought here. I'll come back to it. It's the wine. It's the wine, Bob. Please delete this. But that's, if they're going to make a movie and it's going to be Bob Burns, and if you're, if Rondo's going to be in there, I would like to know more about both of them as people. And I guess you're saying you didn't get that in this film.
No. The main takeaway about who Bob Burns is, just to kind of bring back a topic we were talking about earlier, in his office he had a deep throat pinball game.
That's something I'd spend money on.
I mean, not the worst tie-in when you think about it. Are the paddles just little dicks?
I didn't get that good a look at it.
And then the whole of the
Oh, God. Well, yeah, that was probably part of it, yes.
I'm never getting my job back after this.
The pinball is just a clitoris. A free-floating clitoris that can go in your throat or your vagina.
At work, in your car, at house?
Medical miracle. All right.
Yeah,
now,
I think we're going to move on from...
let's talk about a French classic.
Oh. So this is Discreet Charm.
The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie, 1972, another film that's turning 50 this year, directed by Luis Buñuel. And it tells the story of a group of upper-class people in Paris who are trying to get together to have a meal. And every time they try to get together to have a meal, something happens. Like the first time they get together, the four of our core six characters come to the house, and the other two are supposed to be hosting, but they've shown up a night early, so the party isn't happening. So they leave and they go to a restaurant down the street. They bring their host with them, the female half of their host. The other host isn't there. So there's five of them. They go down the road to this restaurant, and the restaurant is locked up. They think it's closed. They're going to leave. Then somebody comes out and lets them in and says, no, we're open. It's fine, really. So they go in. They sit down. They're going to have their meal. Then they hear a woman crying behind a curtain in the restaurant. So the women get up to go look, and when they look, there's a man's body laying across a table, and it's the owner of the restaurant. He's died that very day. and they've closed the restaurant to mourn him, but they want to make a little money, so they let these people in. So they get up and leave. They don't stay because there's a dead body.
Yeah.
So this keeps happening. These things just keep happening that prevent them from having a meal, and it's all becomes very.
They're so hungry.
It all becomes this sort of a dream sequence eventually, where we don't ever see them eat. We don't ever get to see that happen, but we see them trying to get together to have a meal together that just keeps getting interrupted. And it's becomes this thing where it becomes like they start having these weird dreams. The men have them specifically about trying to get together, and then something happening where it turns violent to the just various different ways. It's such a brilliant movie, and it's got so much deeper meaning to it. But mostly, what it is just Luis Buñuel playing with the form of film. He's playing with the way that you watch movies, the way you go into a movie expecting a linear story to being told. And the way you expect everything to make sense, he's just messing with you the entire time, and it's just kind of brilliant.
I guess I'm wondering, how can America ruin that film? Because they could easily take it, and I'm already thinking of casting right now. How can we do this that would make it so America and very white? I think we could do that here.
They're trying to go to Cracker Barrel.
They can never get to Cracker Barrel.
Some redneck is dead in the back room at Cracker Barrel. I'm going to alienate half the audience.
Hey, they have great hash browns, but still, regardless.
Truly, nobody cares about this. Nobody's reading my review of this that I wrote. I wrote a beautiful 1,000-page, appreciation.
1,000-page?
1,000-word
Oh my God!
appreciation.
Well, no wonder.
A 1,000-word appreciation of this, and
I'm not reading a 1,000-page review of a movie.
It's just really good. And
Sean's manuscript of this small French film.
It's a brilliant small French film.
Is that what it is?
50-year-old classic.
50-year-old classic. Who said it was a classic? The French?
Yes.
Or you?
And just about anybody who loves film, yes.
See, now I just sound so uneducated. And you'd be right. You'd be right.
Amy, he said film, not movies. Film.
Amy, what you might know from Buñuel is you've seen it, whether you've wanted to see it or not, and that is that there's the Un Chien Andalou, which is the scene where a woman has her eyeball slit by a razor blade.
Yeah.
Him and Salvador Dali directed that together.
Dali was fucking crazy, and Dali is I've had 5 bottles of NyQuil, and that's just it's just a Dali drink. I love Dali, but fucking crazy. God damn.
Yeah, but I love this movie. I wish more people would see this movie.
And read his review.
It's just an incredible film. They just redid it in 4K. It's it's incredible, and it's a way to learn about movies, especially because the way that you could read this movie in a very that's something about comparing the bourgeoisie to the proletariat and hunger and all that. You could read into that. You could read religious themes into it if you wanted to. But the bottom line is that mostly this is just Buñuel messing with the form of film and messing with your expectations and how you watch movies.
I love the idea of it. I love, I would watch that.
There's all this other stuff that's happening that's probably, in other movies would be more interesting. There's a drug deal going around. These guys, the guys in the movie are literally just in the midst of a drug deal, and it's just the most casual conversation. It's not even in the movie. It's not even part of the main plot. They mention it. They're casually making a drug deal, and then it's gone, and they move on. There's another one where the military shows up to do maneuvers outside of the house, and then the military they showed up a night early, so now they're here in the house to spend the night because they've been invited, and so that's interrupted the meal. But then somebody attacks outside, and so they've got to go outside and begin their war game, and just...
See, and in America, they would call it minor inconveniences. Why do I always have to ruin every good movie by making it American?
No, in America, they'd be swatted.
It'd be like a Bob's Burgers episode. It'd be fantastic.
So, Jeff, what's the best French horror movie?
Well, up until the very end of it, I thought that High Tension was going to be one of the best ones, but it turns out, no,
ends up absolute garbage.
Ends up being just a homophobic piece of shit at the end, basically. The whole movie, I was like, oh, this is really good, and then the end, I was like, what the fuck, Jesus? Yeah, it was. Yeah. The best French horror movie is probably something I probably haven't seen because I flunked French. I didn't actually flunk it. I just didn't care. I was just there to change my French name every 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I was, to bring it all back and tie it all together, I was Elvis for a while in French class.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, Madame Smith really fucking hated me.
Elvis.
Yeah, everybody, to this day, some of my classmates call me Elvis. So
I was Giselle, and it was because it was the last name that was on the list. I was the last person called. Everybody else got like a really cool name, and I got...
You're not Ghislaine? Ghislaine Maxwell? Oh, sorry, wrong podcast.
Welcome to the true crime portion.
Yes.
Oh, my hand's not tired yet. Here we go. All right. I love this, and I think I would actually watch this. I just hate subtitles because I'm tired. But I would watch it on a good day.
Oh, you always get a copy of Joe Dirt.
Oh, dude. No, I've watched so many
Is that
movies.
the American remake?
Yeah. No, like, I've watched things in Tamil, and like you know, I'm just, that's my, like, I can read fast, but French, I can't do it. I don't know why. I think it's because I took 4 years of it, and I just want that part of my life gone. Not because of French, just because it was a bad period of life right there. I love...
Let's move on.
Okay, because now it's time to go so gay that we had to bring Jeff. How queer are we here? Well, Jeff is here to talk about Cruising.
The
Why
movie.
don't you take the lead on
The
this
song.
Okay, yeah, Cruising by Gwyneth Paltrow and Huey Lewis. Nope, wrong one. Cruising is from 1980. It stars Al Pacino as a cop in New York City who, at the beginning of the movie, there are several body parts that have washed up as part of a serial killer's MO in the East River and in the Hudson, and Paul Sorvino wants to solve it, and he's gonna make sure that Al Pacino makes detective if he can solve these crimes. It's by William Friedkin, who did The Exorcist and The Boys in the Band, so he has a little bit of queer bona fides, but he tells the story in a way that once Pacino goes undercover, he's on his own. He doesn't have any backups. There's, he can't carry a weapon, nothing, because he has to appear like one of these guys. Most of the men who have been murdered look somewhat like him. And as a matter of fact, the first victim that you see on screen played Pacino's double a couple times, and was in Scarface and things like that. He goes, his character's name is Steve Burns, and he goes undercover and rents an apartment in Greenwich Village, moves in next to a really nice guy played by Don Scardino, who's a pretty good director nowadays. And his character, Ted, befriends him. He just wants a friend. He's got a live-in lover who is on the road as a dancer. He tells him about all the murders that have been happening, and Pacino's like, "Oh, wow, I've never heard about this. This is crazy. Hooah!" He doesn't actually say hooah, but I would kill for him to say hooah in the middle of Cruising. And then there are various scenes of him in the underground S&M leather scene, filmed at actual S&M leather bars in New York City of the time.
And this is 1980, right?
It came out in 1980. It was filmed in 1979 and parts of 1980. One of the reasons I love this movie is that I was told I wasn't supposed to, that it was a homophobic piece of shit, that it was, it was bad for the gay community. And at the time, yeah, I can see that. It was, 1980, just before AIDS, and when gay people were just starting to become mainstream and, gaining a little foothold in society, getting a little respect, and along comes Cruising. They would flash lights on the actors while they were filming. They would blow whistles and air horns while they were trying to talk whenever they were outside. But in the few years, probably in the last 10 years, it has sort of gained a following amongst gay horror fans, especially because it's really, I mean, it's a police procedural movie, but it's also kind of a horror movie because there is a killer,
right,
who, you know, he's stalking the gay community, and he's in a kind of an interesting thing that now watching it, kind of, you think of the AIDS crisis. In the first victim plays the killer in a later scene, and the first killer it becomes a victim down in the Ramble in Central Park, and it plays with that, you know. And looking back now, it could be seen as kind of a metaphor for AIDS, you know, that it's the passed on.
Right.
And then we, you know, later in the movie, we kind of focus on one guy as the killer, and it becomes more of a kind of a, you know, straight ahead police procedural thriller, semi-horror movie at that point. We're meant to think towards the end that maybe Pacino's doing some of the killings. You know, has he turned? Has he infected his girlfriend, played by Karen Allen, pre-Indy? You know, it's. I was told, in no uncertain terms, that it was a homophobic piece of shit. I watched The Celluloid Closet, which it was the movie version of the book by Vito Russo, who was talking about how, you know, we've made so many strides in cinema as gay people, but here comes cruising and it's going to ruin it all. I think nowadays it's because we're past that, and there's, you know, more gay people are everywhere and in every part of society. It's more of just a horror movie, and that's one of the reasons I love it, because it was verboten. And now, you know, now I'm like, oh yeah, it's Pride Month, time to watch Cruising.
That uplifting movie we all need to see.
Incidentally, I did do a drawing of I did a movie poster for Cruising that is now on the IMDb webpage.
Nice.
Somebody put it up there, so
Very cool.
That is very cool.
So, what did you think, Sean?
I wasn't a big fan.
It wasn't A24, so.
I just didn't. I couldn't. What you were saying about the killer chain, I didn't pick up on that at all. I was just kind of confused as to what they were trying to go for. I thought James Remar was going to come back and be the killer.
Did you catch the snippets of hardcore porn as the killer was striking?
I think I did. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I was watching the movie, but it just wasn't holding my attention very well.
He's playing Farmville on his phone like watching Cruising.
Goddamn gays.
Yeah. That's a weird standard to have. You have to like Cruising her.
I was surprised to see that Ed O'Neill was in this.
Oh, actually, this movie, it was one of his first movie roles.
Oh my god!
And he's a member of there's a scene where Pacino has gone up to a hotel room that he's rented with Jay Iacovone, who you've seen him 100 times.
He was gorgeous.
Yeah, he was really, really hot. He was on soap operas and procedurals and, you know, TV guest spots, whatever. They go up to Pacino's hotel room that he's rented at the St. James Hotel, and the cops bust in. They're trying to catch this guy.
Yeah. And
they think that that Jay Iacovone's character Skip is the killer. So they haul him and Pacino into the precinct and slap him around a little bit, and then out of the blue comes this 6'5" black cowboy in a jockstrap and nothing else, and just comes up and punches and slaps both of them, and then walks out of the room for no reason. Now, the real reason that this happened is because back then, you know, before cops were all respectable members of society in New York, and, you know, they would do the kind of shit like that to throw you off, so that if you went and tried to report them for beating you up or trying to beat a confession out of you or whatever, well, this guy came in and he was wearing a cowboy hat and a jockstrap and he beat the shit out of me. They're not, you know, who's going to believe that?
I had a friend that told that story once.
Yeah, see, again, I'm not aware of that. I would just thought this was just fucking random.
Yeah.
Like, it just seemed like totally, completely random to me.
I would like that, though.
It was just very odd and
random.
Off-putting.
Well done.
And I think I've become so desensitized to much of, subcultures and such that I really wasn't that thrown by seeing, men dancing, men kissing, men in leather. Like, not that I see that all the time, but I'm just not.
Come on, the Davenport Aldi is lit.
I'm just kind of desensitized to it, so it didn't shock me, I guess.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean,
but
that
it
was
would have had you
42 years
Yeah.
ago.
Right.
That was shocking, and
I guess I just wasn't drawn in enough to put myself in that mindset.
yeah. Well, in the book that it's based on has nothing to do with the leather scene whatsoever. It's just a gay serial killer, and they, I prefer the ending of the book, but Friedkin he'd worked with a guy who on The Exorcist, Paul Bateson, who was in the scene where Reagan is in the hospital and she's getting all the tests, and he was a radiographer, I believe, and he was in that scene. You can see him; he's wearing a leather cuff on his hand. And he was in that scene with her because he was a medical professional. Well, several years later, he killed the theater critic for, I want to say it's The Village Voice. And so Friedkin, having known him, he went up and he said, he went to visit him in prison. He goes, what happened? He goes, well, I beat him up for his money and whatever. And what about all these other guys they say you killed? Well, I don't remember it, but they said they'd give me a reduced sentence if I confess to all these other murders. And that's, one of the things that happens in cruising. And so that's like, so he talked to Paul Bateson, and he was talking about how he was in the leather scene and all that. And that kind of became the germination for the leather part of this book adaptation. So it's got, if you can watch it with commentary, there's a lot of insights like that I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, kind of interesting. But if you watch there's a Blu-ray out there that has two commentaries. One is by William Friedkin, and one is by William Friedkin and somebody else who, again, name escaping me. Listen to that one, because William Friedkin, when he does commentaries by himself, he just narrates the movie. That's why I can't watch the Exorcist commentary. Reagan is walking down the stairs now, and she, that's the kind of thing that he does. But there's a lot of insight in the extras on the Blu-ray, and having been a fan of this movie for the last 15 years since I saw it the first time, it's always one of those movies I want to see I want to gauge people's reaction to, and it has layers, and sometimes you pick up on those, sometimes you don't.
If you like within your community, Jeff, when you discuss the film Cruising, how do you have people that are like, oh God, you like that movie? Fuck you, or like, oh no, I get it, I can see, or is it just like, no, we just don't.
Well, I mean,
in your community.
To be honest, I don't have. Most of the people that I talk to aren't of the community. But
I thought you were going to say, I don't have a community.
I really don't. I'm a loser. I have a tight little group of Twitter friends who talks about horror movies, and we started there's a little DM group that we have going on about, started off as Scream, but we talk about other horror movies and whatever, and it kind of, I think I'm the oldest one there, so I have the most,
Seniority?
Well, no, I
authority? What are we trying to say?
I have the most experience with the movie Cruising.
With the movie.
Well, yeah. And then, my friend Justin, we talk about that kind of stuff all the time. But I think it's one of those things where Gen X gays, because they were told it was taboo and you shouldn't watch this movie.
Yeah.
I think we kind of have a special affinity for it.
Yeah.
I know that there's a lot of people, like Pacino fans, were clamoring for it to be released on Blu-ray. I had the Korean DVD for about 10 years until they released this one. I got it on eBay for like $3, but it was $10 shipped.
And there's like a Criterion edition?
No, it's Arrow Films.
Oh, okay.
So there are lots of interviews and things like that. Pacino won't talk about the movie because he hates William Friedkin, apparently, because they did not get along on the set of this movie, and that kind of comes through in some parts.
Yeah.
There's a couple scenes, I don't want to spoil them because I really want you to just go out and watch the movie, that really make you question the motives of Steve Burns, Pacino's character, but also Friedkin's direction. And I think that, watch it for yourself, but a few of the people that I've talked to who've seen it who did not like it said that they thought it was, it was like, oh, you can definitely tell it was told by a straight man. But to my knowledge, Gerald Walker, who wrote the book, was not. So there's the seeds of that.
Right.
So
that kind of gets into something that I had kind of an issue with, which is that it does to me feel like a very, other than the gay aspects of it, it feels like a police procedural in some ways. There's an investigation of a murder of a serial killer going on, and it kind of felt very familiar in that way, aside from all the leather and the buttholes.
Yeah. So many buttholes.
So many buttholes.
there's not. You think there is. It's like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You don't see a lot, but there's a lot suggested. So you think
all the chaps were assless. All of them.
But you don't actually get to see the butthole.
There were no chocolate starfish in the movie. The closest you get is to a guy who's greasing up his whole arm with Crisco.
I think now is the perfect time for a fun fact for an actor that was in Cruisin'. Not for you, Jeff, because you won't give a shit about this. But for Sean and I, who are fans of the show Boy Meets World, William Russ plays Paul Gaines in this movie. And I love William Russ. And I did not know he was in this movie either.
There's a lot of people
I'm looking
in
at
this movie.
this list. It's just insane. Well, I mean, like James Remar, I know. Richard Cox, I know. But Powers fucking Booth was in this movie?
He has a really, really tiny part. And it's one of his first
But
movies.
essential.
Yes.
Hanky. His name's Hanky.
Well,
Because he's behind the hankies. He sells the hankies that you
sells
put in your
the
pocket.
hankies.
That's
Just tell him, don't wear the yellow. Do not wear the yellow hanky.
if you're not into water sports, why are you wearing that fucking yellow hanky?
That's like in the early 2000s when they were wearing colored bracelets with how far they'd gone.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you.
If you really want to go down the rabbit hole,
I do. Or the butthole for this.
Well, if you want to go up the butthole,
for this one.
you want to Google the hanky code. That's an interesting old.
Hanky. I think you and I should talk.
Possibly, yeah. That was when gay people were less visible. That was one of the ways to let people know what you were into.
Right.
Like a yellow hanky means that you're into water sports, as the guy says in the movie.
I wish we could use this now, like for everybody. Like
People still do.
So
I mean,
great.
I don't want to go too much into it
Right.
because this is a family show, which is why we're talking about buttholes.
And Boy Meets World,
Yeah.
oddly enough. So
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's appropriate.
But a lot of the stuff in this movie is kind of dated because of visibility and things like that, although I will probably end up having to go back to the hanky code sooner rather than later.
On our route, yes,
yeah.
you are. Yeah.
It's of its time, but it's like a lot of, the movie, the 70s were filled with these police procedurals.
Right.
And this was kind of just a twist on it, really.
Yeah. What they did, because I remember there was at least 2 to 3 episodes of Law & Order or Special Victims Unit that did this very kind of thing. Probably taken from Cruising, I would assume, because it's so that area.
I know that, Sean, you hated the movie 10 to Midnight.
Oh, yeah, garbage. Absolute trash.
I love it because it's trash.
You love trash.
And Gene Davis was in that movie. He played the killer in that movie. Did you recognize him in Cruising?
No, I missed him.
He played the blonde trans prostitute, sex worker, who looks just like Barbara Hershey in a blonde wig.
I gotta see it now. I gotta see it.
You can't unsee Barbara Hershey when you look at him now. I guarantee it. But he was in there. Joe Spinell from Maniac, and myriad other the Godfather movies and things like that. He played.
I don't know the name of the guy, but there's a guy who he was one of the bad guys in Dumb and Dumber. He was trying to track down Lloyd and him, he's in the van with them when they're riding to Colorado.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah,
they're
yeah.
doing that screaming thing.
Yeah.
That guy's in this movie. He plays one of the cops.
Oh,
He plays his partner.
yeah.
God, that's funny.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, that are in this movie went on to work that are still working.
Yeah.
And somehow Brian James isn't in this movie. How is that possible?
Don't know. Couldn't tell you.
Deep cut 80s reference for everybody.
One of the cops in the movie is actually a real cop who was one of the ones who he was a detective on the body parts in the Hudson case that they used as a framing device for this.
Ooh.
It's just, to me, it's, and again, just how far we've come as, well, let's just say for now how far we've come with things. I'm looking at like this cast list and it's like white man, Karen Allen, white man, and they almost all have mustaches and almost all look like they were from the 1980s.
This is a very, very white-centric movie.
Yeah, you can
and that's William Friedkin.
Yeah.
I don't think he's in his little bubble.
But you've got Roy Vitt that's in it, and like wasn't he was the cowboy, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So like that's the only black man, that's the only person of color in this film. Just to touch on that, I just think that's fascinating because, again, like when I was a little kid, I remember thinking, when I thought of gay men, I thought of like white femme. Like I thought of like the friends that I have now. Really, the really, like, you know what I'm talking about.
No, yeah.
But that's sad to me because there's such a spectrum.
Well, that's the media.
Right.
You up until even now, you're getting stories that are purely white. Now they've just redone Queer as Folk.
I know.
And the original one
So white.
was, I mean, I know Canada,
I know.
but it was like
It says
really
like no
white.
one else was queer. No one else was queer.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, the the street washing of gay people. Really.
Yeah.
The only gay people you can see on TV or in movies are in loving relationships, committed relationships, and they're both kind of good looking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or they're a gay clown like Jack from Willing Place. Just Jack. But, I mean, Cruising is like I said, it's of its time.
Yeah.
It's William Friedkin, so it is very white. But having lived in New York and, been in, like, gay bars there and things like that, it's that you can tell this was before AIDS.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that, now most of the gay people that were in that movie are probably dead.
Yeah.
And that was like, it's like a snapshot of 1979,
I can appreciate
1980,
that.
that you don't see anymore. And it's, in a way, it's sad that it has to be, they have to be being murdered, but
In
as somebody who loves fucking horror movies,
yes.
come on,
More body parts, please. I'll take 5.
having been in the ramble after 1 o'clock with a bunch of my friends and realizing that that's where the killer is, and I saw this movie before I ever went to the ramble with my ex, and we're jokingly walking up and going, "Who's here? I'm here." And nobody got it except us. We thought it was the funniest thing in the world, but
you had to have those shades on to make it work.
Yeah. Who are shades in Central Park at night? Come on.
So that must be Larry Atlas you're talking about. Eric Rossman in the film. Because this guy's got shades on.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that I can be part of this podcast and not know a goddamn thing that I'm talking about, and also hand out knowledge that no one really needs. But here I am. I promise the next one I'm on, I will actually watch something. I swear.
I found this movie just to be just not very distinguished as a movie. I didn't find it to be very. I think what you mentioned about Pacino and Friedkin, that clicked in my head because I don't think this is Pacino's best performance at all.
No.
I think this is he almost feels kind of pushed around by the plot. He doesn't feel he doesn't seem comfortable anywhere where he is.
Well,
and I know that's part of the character. Because I know that I understand that's part of the character, but it just didn't. He didn't feel like he wanted to be in this movie.
what's funny is he pushed for this part. The character is 29 years old.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be played by Richard Gere originally, which, you can see that, but it wouldn't have been the same movie at all.
Right.
But Pacino really wanted it, and he was 40 at the time, playing a 29-year-old.
I did not
Yeah,
realize
so
that.
it was like, oh, okay, you're... It's like 90210.
Wait, so
Senior.
if Gere had played the role, would they have then just gotten rid of the look of the guy entirely and just made him look like Richard Gere?
Don't know. I don't, that's...
Because that seems like, obviously they picked Pacino's, or they picked Burns because he looks like the guy that the killer is killing.
It probably would have been, a little more feminine looking, because, Richard Gere in 1980 was not,
No.
he's still...
very pretty.
He's pretty.
Yeah.
He's not, he doesn't have any roughness or, a lot of character to his face.
Right.
He's kind of I don't mean this is a bad thing, but he's kind of bland looking. He's kind of a cipher, so you can kind of put yourself on him.
Yeah.
Whereas Pacino is Pacino, and by then, he was very well known for The Godfather, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
This was pre or post Scarface, right?
Pre.
Or no, pre.
Yeah, that was
Scarface.
83, I believe.
Oh, right.
This was after, late 70s, so he'd done Dog Day Afternoon and,
See, I do know that. I have watched some films.
You'd think Dog Day Afternoon would have prepared Pacino fans to not be upset.
See, I don't think that the fans were necessarily upset.
Yeah.
It was the gay community because they didn't want a negative portrayal of the community. And they'd read the book, I'm sure, and knew what was coming up and had heard from some of the leather queens that they were going to be in this movie at the Ramrod or the Mine Shaft. And I'm actually listening to a book right now called How to Survive a Plague, which there's a documentary about. And they talk about Larry Kramer, who was a famous gay activist who, when they were shutting the bathhouses down during the AIDS crisis, he said, and tying it into this movie, you see the mine shaft a couple times in this movie, and he said, the bathhouses are, if you're going to shut those down, you might as well shut down the mine shaft too, because it's more unsanitary than the bathhouses. And I think the mine shaft is where the guy's greasing up his whole arm with Crisco. So, yeah.
My asshole hurts just thinking about it.
To paraphrase Madonna.
I think that I need to add just one more fun fact, because that's all I've got for this podcast. Al Pacino plays Steve Burns in this film. Steve Burns is also the name of the man
Blue's Clues.
who played Steve from Blue's Clues, yes. Also released an amazing album back in the early 2000s. But, Steve Burns. So when you look at Al Pacino, you're going to think of Blue's Clues from now on. A gay Blue's Clues, which actually should happen anyway.
Gayer Blues Clues.
A gayer Blues Clues should happen.
More bondage.
Stay away from Blue. Stay away from Blue.
How can we corrupt you as well? We'll find a way. God bless.
Yeah,
I'm going to go back and watch it because, again, I got like 10 minutes into it and I couldn't deal right away. So I need to go back and just sit through it and enjoy it because I love Karen Ellen too.
Well, she's not in this movie a whole lot, so enjoy.
I'll just skip over. Just keep finding Karen Ellen throughout the movie, like as much as I could find her.
There is a scene at the end where he has tried to keep his lives separate.
Yeah.
He's a straight man, but he's living in a gay world, and you got to wonder towards the end of it if he's, is he kind of, and he brings his leather home, and she tries it on, and it's like, oh, the worlds collide, and then he looks at the camera, and you're like, huh.
Uh-huh.
So you got, there's a character death in there that you're like, oh, is this him dealing with his repressed homosexuality? It's like, So.
I got that. It felt more like that's the first part that really felt like a horror movie to me. It switched genres for me in that moment.
Nice. But it's like it's a to me it's I think of it as a slasher movie.
Yeah.
Late 70s, early 80s. Knifings in the park and at seedy hotels.
You told me not to be scared of it, but like the way you're describing it, I don't really want to watch it. Because it's like, if it's like a slasher movie, I don't like slasher movies.
Amy, are you a gay man in 1980?
I could have
Who looks
been.
kind of like Pacino.
Yeah.
Like, we all know I do, but I mean, like...
Hooah! Amy, come on.
Is that a whole can of Crisco? Hooah! Do you like my yellow hanky? Hooah!
I want this to stop. I need this to stop.
You've ruined water sports forever. She's never going to ski again.
God. Thank God.
Are you into water sports? No, I like to watch. Now take that fucking yellow hanky out of your pocket. That's one of the best lines in the movie. This guy, and he's been in stuff. You know, this guy has been in stuff, and you're like, you got your start yelling at Pacino about a yellow hanky and water sports? Girl.
Oh, God bless. Hey, that's the end of our list.
Yeah,
that was
it
the
is.
last one. And, you know, and again, thank you for letting me just sit here and not have any information whatsoever.
Well done. You did
Thank you.
great at that.
You're like producer Amy.
Yeah, I feel really bad about this. But I also feel really good because I drank a lot of wine throughout this time, so it's fine.